A foolish man does not wear a sign. He wears habits. He carries them in how he walks, how he responds, how he presents his weaknesses with pride and his strengths with fear. And while most people look for intelligence in words, Machiavelli looked for stupidity in patterns, because the foolish man never stops repeating them. The first sign is that he thinks respect is earned by good intentions. The fool lives in a fairy tale where effort equals admiration. He believes that as long as he means well, he should be loved, respected, and trusted. But Machiavelli knew better. The world does not care about your heart. It cares about your impact. A foolish man will talk too much about what he tried to do instead of what he actually did. He expects people to understand his side before he's even earned their attention, and feels entitled to respect simply for existing with nice values. He'll say things like, "At least I tried. That wasn't my intention." Or, "Why are people so mean when I'm just being kind?" And while he waits for recognition based on morality, sharper men are gaining power by being effective. Machiavelli taught that rulers must be feared before they are loved. And the same rule applies to individuals. Impact first, reputation second, intention irrelevant. The fool confuses morality with competence. He thinks being a good guy is enough. But a world that runs on dominance, incentives, and appearances punishes such delusion. Kindness without strength is not virtue, it's bait. Another sign is that he defends himself loudly. The foolish man thinks volume equals strength. When he's accused, he shouts. When he's questioned, he overshouts. When his ego is bruised, he cannot resist the need to explain. Why? Because his identity is built on how others perceive him. He is terrified of being misunderstood. So, he becomes predictable. And predictability is a weakness. Machiavelli warned about constantly because it makes you manipulable. The wise man knows silence is power. The fool, on the other hand, tries to talk his way out of every moment of vulnerability. And in doing so, he reveals far more than the accusation ever could. This man will rush to clarify things no one even asked for, get emotional at small insults, and act like setting the record straight is more important than moving on. He doesn't realize that a lion doesn't explain itself to sheep. A truly powerful man lets mystery and perception do the work. The foolish one, however, turns every insult into a spotlight on his own insecurities. He also chooses pleasure over strategy. You can spot a fool not by how he talks about power, but by what he sacrifices it for. The foolish man is constantly ruled by appetite. Dopamine, lust, validation, entertainment. He thinks he's enjoying life, but he's really being sedated by it. He seeks quick highs over long-term gains, comfort over discomfort that leads to growth, and attention from anyone over respect from a few. He believes his feelings are the compass, that what feels right is right. But as Machiavelli put it, it is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking. This isn't about rejecting pleasure. It's about mastering it. The fool is a slave to his urges. The strategist uses them as tools. Every decision the foolish man makes is emotional. He doesn't even realize it. But every moment he avoids pain, confrontation, solitude, or control. He's giving up influence for comfort. A dangerous trade. A fourth sign is that he shows his whole hand. The foolish man believes in transparency. He thinks being an open book is honest and admirable. But what he fails to understand is that people only respect what they don't fully understand. Machiavelli knew the power of opaqueness. When people can't predict you, they fear you. When people can't read your full hand, they overestimate it. But the foolish man kills his own mystique by confessing everything. His plans, his wounds, his doubts, his dreams. You'll hear him say things like, "I'm just being real. I have nothing to hide." Or, "I don't care what people think." But all of this is camouflage for weakness. Because deep down, he does care. He just doesn't know how to control perception, so he pretends it doesn't matter. In reality, he's handed over his power the moment he reveals his inner map. Mystery is not dishonesty. It is self-preservation. Power lives in the unknown. The more people think they know you, the less control you have over their imagination. The foolish man forgets this. He also imitates without understanding. The world is full of men trying to copy what works without understanding why it works. The foolish man sees confidence and tries to mimic the posture. He sees success and copies the routine, but he never asks the deeper questions. Machiavelli observed that men who pretend to be lions but are truly foxes eventually get eaten because the appearance of strength without the foundation of wisdom is suicidal. This kind of fool copies other success formulas without tailoring them, adopts surface-level habits without internal transformation, and thinks he's a wolf because he bought a Rolex. He fails to realize that power is not costume, it's calculation. You cannot mimic a predator's tactics if you have the instincts of prey. True strategy is forged in solitude, pain, and sharp observation. The fool skips that step and becomes a caricature of strength. He wants the aura of Machiavelli without the paranoia, the coldness, the isolation that builds real force. So, he plays a role, and all roles eventually get exposed. The foolish man also surrounds himself with echoes. He wants to feel good more than he wants to grow. So, he surrounds himself with people who say yes, friends who laugh at his jokes, women who validate his ego, and co-workers who never challenge his ideas. This echo chamber becomes his reality, and because no one checks him, he never evolves. Machiavelli warned rulers to avoid flatterers because flattery blinds you to threat. And the same applies here. The foolish man doesn't know how weak he's becoming until it's too late. Until a sharper man enters the room and tears through his delusion like paper. You can recognize this man when he avoids confrontation at all costs, cuts off people who challenge him, and only shares his opinions in safe spaces. He is building a kingdom of mirrors, not men. And mirrors don't defend you when war comes. They only reflect your image until it shatters. Furthermore, he reacts emotionally to everything. Watch closely. The moment a man reacts instantly to something small, an insult, a rejection, a delay, you are watching weakness reveal itself. The fool has no internal pause. He is constantly at the mercy of external stimuli. Machiavelli knew that power requires emotional control, the ability to wait, to pretend, to absorb insult without flinching. These are marks of command. But the foolish man wears his emotions like a cracked mask. Every situation pulls a new face out of him. He snaps when corrected, sulks when ignored, and boasts when praised. All of it reveals insecurity. The wise man chooses his responses. The foolish one is always reacting. He confuses emotion with authenticity, never realizing that raw emotion is a gift to the enemy. Perhaps the most fatal trait of all is that the foolish man believes power is a personality. He believes that power is about being dominant, cool, assertive, or alpha. He reduces centuries of strategic evolution into a set of mannerisms. And in doing so, he becomes easy to read, easier to predict, and even easier to defeat. Machiavelli would laugh at this because true power is not about being loud or aggressive. It's about being unreadable, not about being masculine, but about being untouchable. The man who confuses image with force will bark louder when ignored, seek control in every room, and mistake compliance for respect. But the man who understands power knows that it's not what people see, it's what they feel when they're around you. That cold uncertainty, that calculated silence, that air of consequence. The foolish man turns power into theater. The dangerous man turns it into presence. The greatest danger of a foolish man is not that he is harmless, it's that he believes he is. He walks into traps thinking they are opportunities. He exposes his weaknesses and calls it vulnerability. He moves without calculating, speaks without weighing, and lives under the illusion that the world will forgive what it does not understand. But Machiavelli knew the world never forgives weakness. It only delays its punishment. Another sign is that he thinks forgiveness is a strategy. The foolish man confuses virtue with value. He believes that being forgiving makes him noble, that letting things go will earn him peace or respect. But in a world of predators and opportunists, this isn't peace, it's permission. He forgives the friend who subtly disrespected him in front of others, the lover who withheld affection to gain control, and the employer who promised a raise and delivered excuses. And each time he thinks he's taking the high road. What he doesn't realize is that forgiveness, when handed out cheaply, becomes a silent signal. You can betray me again. Machiavelli advised rulers to punish betrayal ruthlessly and publicly, not just for justice, but for deterrence. When you forgive too quickly, too quietly, or too often, you train the world to test your limits. The wise man makes his mercy look like a calculation, not a habit. But the fool? He forgives not because he is strong, but because he fears the confrontation. One of the most damning signs of a foolish man is that he overinvests in people who don't deserve it. He sees potential everywhere except within himself. He will pour time, emotion, attention, even money into people who have shown him again and again they're not worth it. He'll chase women who give him scraps of affection, defend friends who mock him behind closed doors, and support relatives who only reach out when they need something. He calls it loyalty. He calls it love. But Machiavelli would call it strategic blindness, because loyalty to those who don't bring you power is not loyalty. It's self-destruction. A foolish man misplaces his energy. He bets on the idea of someone, not the reality of what they give him. Meanwhile, his own goals, talents, and development rot in the background. The intelligent man asks, is this alliance beneficial to me? The foolish man asks, but what if they change? The foolish man also speaks as if the world owes him. You've seen this type before. The man who believes he deserves success because he worked hard, that he deserves love because he's a good person, that people should be fair because he would be. This is not optimism, it's entitlement. He complains about not being recognized at work, blames others for why his relationships fail, and says people are fake whenever they don't meet his expectations. He doesn't understand that the world rewards leverage, not lamentation. That success is not earned, it is taken, often from someone else. Machiavelli knew that the powerful must manipulate expectations and control perceptions, not expect mercy. The fool thinks merit alone will protect him, but in a battlefield disguised as society, crying about fairness is the same as dropping your sword in the middle of war. He also thinks appearances don't matter. This man has convinced himself that what's inside is what counts, that people should look past the surface. And while he may be intelligent, kind, or loyal, he doesn't realize the first few seconds someone sees him is all they need to categorize him forever. He'll dress carelessly and call it authentic, refuse to adapt his tone or posture in powerful rooms, and mock those who present themselves well out of envy. Machiavelli emphasized the importance of image constantly. Not because he was superficial, but because he knew that perception governs reality. If you look like a fool, you'll be treated like one, no matter how sharp your mind is. Power is often about illusion. Control the illusion, and you control the world. Disregard it, and the world will disregard you. The fool confuses victimhood with strength. In the age of oversharing, he believes that confessing his traumas makes him powerful, that vulnerability is a badge, that the more he reveals his scars, the more respect he earns. He doesn't understand that there's a difference between healing in silence and bleeding in public. The man who constantly says, "I've been through so much, nobody understands what I faced, or people always use me," is not gaining respect. He's silently broadcasting his weakness. Machiavelli knew the importance of secrecy. The more others know about your pain, your patterns, your emotional triggers, the more easily they can use them. True strength is not about never being wounded. It's about learning to walk again without limping in front of the enemy. This leads to another quietly dangerous trait. He tries to be liked by everyone. He needs universal approval. He cannot handle dislike. He'll bend, break, and shrink himself just to avoid conflict. He thinks this makes him diplomatic, smooth, or kind. But Machiavelli would call it suicidal softness. Such a man avoids saying anything controversial, never draws lines in relationships, and hides opinions to keep the peace. But here's the truth. The more likable you try to be, the more invisible you become. Power requires polarity. You must be willing to be disliked by some in order to be respected by others. The moment a man tries to please everyone, he betrays his own values. And worse, he becomes forgettable. Machiavelli warned that the prince must choose to be feared or loved, but never both. The man who chooses love at all costs will eventually lose both. He also seeks validation from the wrong places. He wants praise. Nothing wrong with that. But a fool will beg for it from the wrong mouths. He'll take compliments from the lazy, the jealous, the disloyal, and feel proud, not realizing that praise from the weak is often a trap to keep him comfortable. He'll post things online just to get compliments, share ideas with people who will never challenge him, and brag subtly, hoping someone will notice. But praise is only as valuable as its source. A lion's approval means something, a sheep's meaningless. Machiavelli would urge men to seek feedback from those above them in power, intelligence, and strategy, not from those who fear confrontation or simply want to keep him docile. The foolish man never questions the quality of the applause. He only needs to hear it. Lastly, and most fatally, the foolish man does not respect the pursuit of power. He treats it like a hustle, a trend, something to try out with half effort and half understanding. He'll watch a few videos, mimic some lines, copy a body language hack, and believe he's on the path. But Machiavellianism is not a performance, it's an operating system. It requires constant vigilance, deep observation, and ruthless reflection. The fool treats it like cosplay. He reads one book and acts like a strategist, uses manipulation tricks like party tricks, and tries to win people over instead of dominating silently. He doesn't realize that true psychological power is built through years of pruning weaknesses, removing dependencies, and sharpening instincts. There is no shortcut. In the end, the foolish man loses, not because the world is unfair, but because he thought he could coast on image, effort, or goodness. The world devours men like him with a smile. The truly dangerous ones watch, they wait, and when the fool opens his mouth again, they move. A man does not become foolish all at once. He becomes foolish by inches. Through compromises, he calls kindness. Through weakness, he calls love. And through comfort, he calls happiness. The Machiavellian eye sees what others refuse too, that every foolish trait begins as something admired. And that's the trap. He equates kindness with safety. The foolish man believes that if he is kind to everyone, the world will spare him. That compassion builds immunity. That if he never offends, he'll never be targeted. But Machiavelli was brutal in his logic. You cannot escape envy. You can only arm yourself against it. And the truth is, the more kind you are without boundaries, the more you invite exploitation. This man says yes when he means no, bails others out, but never himself, and apologizes for things he didn't even do wrong, just to make peace. He thinks this makes him noble, but the people around him quietly categorize him as available, soft, and easy to use. They won't say it to his face, but they will prove it in their behavior. True power isn't about removing kindness. It's about weaponizing it, being kind when you choose, not when you're expected. The foolish man uses kindness as a shield. The wise man uses it as bait. Another deadly sign is that he mistakes talking for thinking. The fool talks endlessly about his plans, his thoughts, his theories. But you notice he never does much. Why? Because he confuses the act of saying something with the act of becoming something. He'll go on long rants about how one day he'll succeed, give deep monologues about the kind of man he's becoming, and have meaningless discussions about psychology, growth, or strategy, but without any application. Machiavelli believed deeply in action. Planning matters, but only if it moves you forward. The foolish man hides in reflection. He uses self-awareness as a cage instead of a launch pad, because talking feels like movement. It feels like progress, but it's still inertia, just louder. True thinkers do not need to narrate their transformation. They disappear, evolve, and return unrecognizable. The foolish man stays visible, noisy, and stagnant. He also craves fairness from unfair systems. A man who seeks fairness in a game built on power will always lose. And yet the foolish man can't help it. He believes systems are just, that effort equals reward, that the right people always rise. So he stays loyal to jobs that underpay him, believes merit alone will protect him from betrayal, and thinks love will stop a disloyal woman from leaving. Machiavelli was clear. Systems are not moral, they are functional. They serve those who bend them, manipulate them, or build alternatives to them. The fool cannot accept this. He needs the world to behave ethically, or else his own passivity will be exposed. So, he blames capitalism, women, society, never realizing that these are just arenas. That complaining about the arena doesn't make you a warrior. It makes you a spectator. The foolish man thinks emotions are a compass. This man does what he feels. He doesn't wait. He doesn't calculate. He reacts. He believes intuition should guide every decision, that if it feels right, it must be right. So he invests in emotional people who drain him, leaves good opportunities because he got bored, and starts new plans with excitement and drops them the moment pressure builds. Emotions are not the problem. Untrained emotions are. And the fool has never trained his. He treats every internal spike like a divine signal. But Machiavelli would laugh because feelings, when left unfiltered, are the enemy of discipline. They are not guides. They are tests. A man must learn to feel everything and act on nothing until the right moment. The fool feels and moves. The strategist feels, waits, and moves when the cost of waiting exceeds the cost of war. He confuses vulnerability with trustworthiness. Modern culture tells us, be vulnerable and people will trust you. Machiavelli would tell you, be vulnerable and people will know where to cut. The foolish man hears this advice and immediately opens his soul to strangers. He tells people about his depression, his trauma, his fears. He believes this builds connection, but what he's really doing is building ammunition for anyone who wants to.